Going to thank everyone again for joining us. My name is Scott Perkins. I'm the Director of Preservation and Collections here at Fallingwater. And I'm joined today by Lindsay Ketterer Gates, who's the Executive Director of the Touchstone Center for Crafts in Farmington, PA, just a few minutes away from Fallingwater. We're going to be talking today about an exhibition we currently have on view in the Speyer Gallery at Fallingwater, celebrating and commemorating the 50th anniversary of the Touchstone Center. So we asked 6 artists who have a relationship to Touchstone to come to Fallingwater and be inspired by the house and the landscape and produce pieces of work for us to have on view, but then also that would be available to purchase as a way of supporting Touchstone. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. I thought I would start with, I'm going to start sharing our presentation here. Back to the beginning here. I thought I'd start with a little bit about Fallingwater and the Kaufmans. The exhibition, like I mentioned, is in our visitor center. Here's just a photograph of it, and it'll be on view through December 31st. We do have quite a lot to be inspired by at Fallingwater. Starting with an image here. This is a house that was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright for the Kaufman family of Pittsburgh as their weekend home, their weekend retreat. And you can see how beautiful it is in the setting. This picture could have been taken this afternoon, but it's a few years old. But it was really Wright's sort of expression of architecture and nature coming together, and his organic architecture philosophies realized in Fallingwater. And the Kaufmans themselves were very interested in art and architecture and decorative arts. And so the artists that we'll hear from today were inspired by that. And here's just a few images I'll show you of the house and the interior and the wide variety of items in the collection, from textiles to ceramics to furniture, most of which was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. But we also have glass, sculpture, works on paper, paintings, baskets, and it really is an eclectic mix. It's a very interesting collection. The Kaufmans were very interested in works of art from different cultures, different times, and then put together inside of this very modern experimental house. Here's one just showing a wide variety of ceramic pieces that are in the guest house. The Touchstone Center for Crafts, like I mentioned, started 50 years ago, and I'm going to just let Lindsay pop on for a minute to speak about the history of Touchstone for a few minutes and talk about their studios. So Lindsay, when you're ready, let me know when to advance the slide.
Thanks, Scott. And first, thank you to Fallingwater for being such wonderful neighbors and partners. We at Touchstone Center for Crafts also share the using nature as inspiration. We are located about 10 miles from Fallingwater in Farmington, Pennsylvania, and we have a campus that actually has 150 wooded acres. Back in 1972, we were founded as Pioneer Crafts Council. And at the time, they did not have a permanent home, and it was really a group of artists who were getting together and starting to bring in artists to teach and preserving different traditional crafts. Fast forward 50 years later, we moved right up the road to a permanent home, which used to be Camp Dunnebeck, and built these amazing studios where we are able to leap forward into experimental and contemporary crafts, as well as traditional crafts, and offer immersive learning experiences in blacksmithing, ceramics, glass, drawing and painting, metal smithing, you name it. We have 7 professional studios that are well equipped and able to accommodate various media. So we bring individuals in from all over the world from May through September to immerse themselves for weeks at a time. They live and eat on our campus. They immerse themselves in the studios all day long. All they have to think about is being creative. We hope that the rural location of our studios allows them to really disconnect themselves from their everyday and really surround themselves in this creative community with others of all ages and all backgrounds, all levels of knowledge, and really just focus on being creative. What's so special about craft schools like Touchstone is that they bring together, you know, all those things that I love, which is art, nature, and community. And we are building a new creative community every week, which is really something special. It's known when you come to Touchstone that you're going to gain a lot of knowledge in the studio, but I think what's always surprising are those moments in between, whether you're around the campfire at night or you're visiting another studio, that are often the most inspiring. Thanks, Scott.
Yep, great. So almost a week ago, or almost a year ago this week, we brought our 6 artists together. You'll meet each one of them shortly, to spend some time at Fallingwater at High Meadow, which is our residency guest house, and then of course take a tour of the property and a tour of the house itself and really get an understanding of it as a piece of architecture and as a collection, and then be inspired by it. And the idea was to give everybody time to sit and work, sketch, collect little bits and pieces of nature. Robin will talk about that in a minute. But it was a wonderful sort of a 3-day opportunity for people to get together and talk about Fallingwater and art. We then decided we would put together an exhibition of these artists' work. I'm going to just kind of turn over to each person for about 5 minutes or so, the screen, to be able to discuss the piece that they did contribute for the exhibition, as well as their thoughts on Touchstone, their thoughts on making and creating art. I've got 2 slides for each artist that you'll meet. The first is Campbell Amsler, and her piece, trio of baskets called Ripples. And then the second slide will be a little bit more about process. So Joe, I'm going to hand this to you to start, and if you just let me know when to advance the slide.
Okay, thank you, Scott. First, I want to thank both Touchstone and Fallingwater for the opportunity for the experience and to be a part of this exhibition. It has been a great stepping stone for me in many ways. So after our 3 days at Fallingwater, I had so many ideas. I did a lot of different samplings. But while I was there, Scott and I had talked about the wisteria that they were trimming off of Fallingwater's guest house, and if that's anything I could use. And I said, yes, I like to use wisteria. So wisteria from Fallingwater came my way, and I started to play with it a little bit. And it, because it's flowing, it just reminded me so much of the water and the rocks, which are really a classy thing you think of falling water. So my style of basketry, I'm basically a traditional functional willow basket weaver, but I do like to play with sculptural forms. And the structure I use is called rib style. It's a very architectural form where you create the outline, the skeleton of the basket with your frames. As you can see, the wisteria kind of became the rim or the opening. You're adding ribs in to create the shape and build it out. And then the weaving is a very simple weaving with the willow that's an over under weave. And even though these are not traditional baskets, they're made the very same way that you would make traditional baskets that have been made for hundreds and hundreds of years. So these were just reminded me of the stones as the water flowed over and down the stream bed in front of falling water. So next slide, Scott. So the top picture in this slide is the wisteria that was actually harvested and brought my way by a trip by Lindsay coming to Iowa this winter. And then the picture of me weaving is a more of a functional traditional basket, but it shows the rib style, the skeleton that was formed to shape this basket out. And that is probably what I'm teaching at Touchstone, it looks like, which is a great studio for basket weaving. And then the picture on the right is the main big piece from Ripples, where it shows the wisteria that created the opening and the form of it, and then the structure of the ribs as it was shaped out and developed. I always have an idea, but when you're working with more sculptural forms with willow and natural materials, they kind of dictate and change and morph as things go along, which is, I always find a great joy in the material. So that's a little bit about my pieces and my work. Thank you.
I was going to say, thanks, Joe. I am going to mention if anyone does have questions for the artist to type them into the Q&A window at the bottom of the screen there, and we will go through them at the end of the presentation. Our next artist is Kevin Crow, who created a piece called Erosion. And Kevin's going to talk a little bit about this piece and then also about the Anagama wood-fired kiln at Touchstone. So, Kevin? Oh, you're on mute, Kevin.
There we go.
Hi.
Technical assistant came to the rescue there.
Okay.
Thank you, Lindsay and Scott, for putting this program together, and I'm honored to be part of it. It's really exciting to revisit Touchstone after teaching there for about 15 years long ago, and to spend time at Fallingwater. And like the other artists, I was just overwhelmed with the tsunami of stimulation of being at Fallingwaters for a couple of days. And I was impacted primarily by the stonework, the boulders, the rock interface that the architecture was installed into. And the rock faces were just patinaed with different layers of erosive process, resulting in wind, freezing and thawing and cracking, and the deposition of moss. And I was just really taken with the process that reflected the process that I use in my Anagama kiln, which is a 8th century Asian design in which the pots are in direct contact with ash. And during combustion, wood produced during combustion has all the constituents of a glass. And that glass over 7 days settles in layers and then melts on the pots. So the image on the left is the face of the pot that's facing the direct open firebox. And on the right, it's the back of that pot. So you see sort of a halo of light ash along the top. And that is the ash that falls during the early stages during the firing, in which the draft is fairly slow. After it picks up, everything becomes horizontal, and the rear of the pot has a iron pulled drawn patina on it, very different from the front. So these pots have very front, back, windward, erosive, and calm faces, much like the rock face that I saw. So I wanted to make a pot that was referencing the boulders in scale and in shape. So this is a 2 foot by 2 foot round, large pot that was placed directly in front of the firebox that got inundated with ash over 7-day firing. We use about 9 cords of wood, and the kiln holds about 1,500 pots. Next slide, please, Scott. So there I am standing in front of the firebox. That's a small preheat firing in which I drive moisture off of the kiln and out of the pots themselves inside the kiln. And this kiln is, as you can imagine, a very large chimney leaned over on its side with a chimney at one end and a firebox at the front. So by about the 10th century, this long pipe was segmented with walls making what's called an aborigama. And that is the kiln that I built at Touchstone 25 years ago, and I rebuilt an improved version of that during the summer. It was really exciting to sort of revisit your past in such a concrete way and to be part of a revitalization and rebuilding Touchstone under Lindsay's guidance and enthusiasm. So the pots in the kiln at Touchstone with the divided walls protect the pots from direct contact with ash and flame. They still get really warm, lovely, toasty, ashy colors, but nothing like the pots in an onigama. And that's because the kiln at Touchstone represents the next technical evolution in kiln development, protecting pots and making fuel more efficiently used. So we fire for 7 days, and the kiln holds us at about 1,500 pots, and it cools for a week before we unload. So I'm really touched by being able to be part of this whole experience and share it with the other artists. And being at Touchstone for a week after not having been there for years was really exciting. And I was extremely excited to tell everybody I know about the developments at Touchstone. And Lindsay's enthusiasm and participation engagement is just infectious. So thank you very, very much for the experience. It's a pleasure to be involved with both of you.
And Yoko Sakino Bove contributed also a piece, a ceramic piece to our exhibition, which she entitled Echo. It's a porcelain piece, a different type of firing, I believe. So I'm going to let her kind of describe it, as well as some of the decorative components of it.
Thank you, Scott. Hi, everyone. Well, I would like to first express my gratitude to both Fallingwater and the Touchstone Center for Craft for having me as one of the presenting artists. It's a great honor for me to be a part of the exhibition, and I learned so much as a craft person. And thank you for the opportunity. So about this piece, Echo, that during the workshop almost a year ago, that I was overwhelmed with so many great ideas, especially talking to everyone who loves Fallingwater, architecture, the Laurel Highland nature, and the people around and with it, that I have to admit that I enjoy the struggle to what to focus at the beginning. So after quite a meandering, that I settled into the side that express the beauty of Laurel Highland when we see it from the Fallingwater house. That as I learned about the Kaufman family and the people who support the Fallingwater, as well as Touchstone Center for Craft, which I have known for the last 17 years, that I wanted to share the beauty and the people's efforts to keep it alive with everyone through my work. So I started developing the design and the grace to express the natural beauty of the area using a grace that's newly developed. So I had so much fun creating a new grace that I named as Fallingwater Blue, I hope you don't mind, to show the crystal clear air and the water in this region and surrounding the house. And I wanted to incorporate the landscape and the flora and the fauna, which the Kaufman family enjoyed looking at from the windows, terrace, and in that area in general. So it took me several experiments to harness the grace and come up with a design to incorporate But that was a great learning process for me, combining all the different glazes and the testing different underglazes, which is the black patterns that decorating the surface of the pot to deliver my joy of seeing those nature and being a part of it. So I'm hoping that that will help everyone to understand that how I came up with this piece. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Yoko. Nicholas Aries, our blacksmith and glassblower, contributed the 3 pieces here that you see. And Nick, tell us about these.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much. So like all the other artists, I was very influenced by the natural setting of Fallingwater. I mean, it's incredibly stunning and pretty much impossible to ignore. And in a lot of my work, I really try to focus on objects that are as far away from metal as you can possibly get. So you can see I really focused on water in this small series of pieces. And so I created the metal to focus on the gestures and the fluid movement of the water itself. So these are kind of like orbs of these vessels represent the orbs of the water that flow underneath the building. And I really try to capture the color and the light that you can see while looking at the water underneath the house and while it's falling over the falls. So it's was quite a challenge creating some of these larger vessels, because you have to create a pretty large bubble of glass and you only have one shot in this particular process. So while creating the metal shells that the glass gets blown into, I have to keep in mind how we're going to put the glass into the shapes while taking them off of the glass while it cools. So my stay at Fallingwater was particularly influential when I was able to hike downstream and spend a lot of time down underneath the falls, down the river a ways. And in the third piece, I really started playing with a couple more geometric shapes and how these geometric shapes hug the natural surroundings. So that's one of the larger the larger piece all the way to the right is a representation of how that house really hugs its natural surroundings. And like Frank Lloyd Wright, I was very influenced of how these two natural shapes and geometric shapes could really come together and blend the environment in with the art of the house. So it was a really fantastic opportunity to go to Fallingwater and stay for the couple of days that we were there. And it's even more amazing to have this opportunity because Touchstone is where I got my start in blacksmithing. And it's even more amazing because Glenn Hoare, another blacksmith that was part of this show, was the person who told me about Touchstone. So in many ways, Touchstone changed my entire career, because before that point, I was just more into welding and fabrication. And because of my influence from working at Touchstone as an assistant, it changed the path of my life in quite a dramatic way. So in this next slide, you can see me on the right actually using what is called a power hammer. It's a 140-year-old tool that Touchstone has at their facility, and it was actually the very first power hammer I ever really fell in love with, which is a tool that blacksmiths use to push the material around in a way that you just can't do it by your own power. So we use these large pieces of equipment to shape these larger pieces of metal. And so the process of forging the material really speaks to the final product. And it's an interesting kind of chicken before the egg kind of conversation of how do you use the material and the tools that you have to influence the final aspects of the pieces you're working on. So, and then on the left of these pictures, it's a picture of the glass blowing process where we actually drop a bubble of molten glass into the metal cage that we've created. And if anybody's seen glass blowing, it really takes a village. So I have about 6 people that help me out with these projects. So I'm not a horrible glass blower, but I definitely get a lot of help with the glass aspect. And I'm located here in Baltimore. So I have a shop in downtown Baltimore, and the glass is all done also in a shop called the Tim McFadden Art Glass. So I really have to give a big shout out to those guys for helping me create these pieces. And then also a big shout out to Fallingwater, because this is definitely a huge step in my career and exposure. So I have to thank everybody involved very much. So thank you, Fallingwater, Touchstone. It's great to feel full circle with this opportunity. And I look forward to teaching for many years. So thanks a lot, guys.
Great, thanks, Nick. Robin Menard. Robin contributed work on paper, watercolor, and colored pencil called Discovery. I think you spent a lot of time walking in the forest for this one. Maybe you could tell us some more about it.
Yes, thanks, Scott, and thank you to Fallingwater and to Touchstone. Both are incredibly influential to those of us in the arts, and it was an amazing experience to do the residency last year. While we were all there, I probably was always the last person in the line, like as we were hiking through the property a lot, because I kept stopping and looking at, the mosses and the ferns and taking pictures, the trees and everything. My painting Discovery is kind of twofold. It's intended to kind of simulate like the discovery of the falls, although the falls in my painting are not meant, they are part of Bear Run, but they're not the falls, that the house was built over. But so you discover the falls in this painting. However, this painting is not of a scene that actually exists on the property. It is a compilation of all the things that caught my attention during the time there, and not only there, but my time at Touchstone. There are, of course, I have to have the rhododendron with the, ochre leaves, which the ochre leaves and the rhododendron were inspiration for Frank Lloyd's Wright choice of colors of the terraces. There is the log with the tiny ferns that it really does exist. I have the photo. So I married all these things I fell in love with and kept stopping to take pictures of and notice. On the left side, there is a stump that has all these tiny little mushrooms. That was actually from my very first class at Touchstone that I taught. It was a weekend class. And I took a picture of the stump outside of the dorm. There's milkweed everywhere in both areas at Touchstone and at Fallingwater. There are teasels, and there are teasels in here, which is an ode to Touchstone and their logo. I hope when people look at this painting that they not only just go straight back to the falls, but they also discovered there are mushrooms everywhere and fungus, and there's even an owl buried in there. So there are all kinds of little things that I discovered when I was on the property, not only on that property, but at Touchstone. And I hope that it reminds everyone to stop. Not only, the house is tremendous and it just takes your breath away, but, also look at what inspired Frank Lloyd Wright and the Kaufmans to build it where they built the house. So, this is a close-up, and this is part of my sketchbook from Fallingwater, and I used watercolor for the painting and colored pencil. And you can do, if you do colored pencil, if you've ever used it, you can blend colors really, really well, almost to the point that people don't always know that you haven't watercolored. It is actually colored pencil, layers and layers. I mean, the painting took over 120 hours. The top, actually both shots on the right are at Touchstone. The bottom one was a class in 2021, I believe. And I was showing them how to do a technique where you work with colored pencil, but you also etch through and kind of do a scratch effect. And the top one was this past summer. I love the painting studio. I can't believe that I got to teach there. With the little babbling brook behind, that you hear water all day long. It's the perfect place to do botanical illustration, which is what I do primarily now. I love teaching at Touchstone very much. You'll see in that top photo, we had a group of students this summer. And the one lady stayed in an Airbnb, and every morning she went out and she would forage for all different kinds of mushrooms and mosses and things. So we all took turns on drawing that mushroom, but it is very rewarding to teach, and especially teach at Touchstone. I do teach other places as well, but there's something about being immersed. And similarly, when we were, all of us were at the residency staying at High Meadow and on property at Fallingwater, we were immersed, and you can't replicate that experience. It is a very unique setting. So thanks, Scott.
And Glenn Hoare, you are a blacksmith as well. And the piece that you created for the exhibition was a table of elements, which I also thought was interesting in the fact that you made the tools to cut the stone. And I thought maybe you could talk about your piece as well as the tools that you've included with it.
Well, thanks, Scott and Izzy. I really appreciated the residency and the inspiration at the house. It's been wonderful. Second or third time back, I went to the house probably close to 40 years ago when I was teaching over there at the Mill Wren. So I've been involved with Touchstone for quite a number of years, and it's always been a very inspirational place. So I went back and forth on a couple different ideas and settled on this kind of table cantilevered off the wall, using some of the elements from around the area of the stone. I was really inspired by the stone, stacked stone. And the scrolls for the leg represent the falling water from the falls. And then the rhododendron is just all over the place. It's just everywhere. So I wanted to incorporate some branches of that. And so in the process, I developed some tools. And blacksmiths are very into tool making, not just for themselves. They often made tools for all the other craftspeople. So I did some study and looked up how to do some stone tools. So the photo there on the right bottom tools, you can see on the left of that display board, or what we call feathers and wedges. So you drill a hole and you drive these in to split a stone on a relatively straight line. And then you got the dressing tools, a chisel and so forth to dress up the edges. And then the top one is a progression of the rhododendron leaf. So you can see the progress there, starting with a blank 1/2-inch square material I used. And then I made a special die to get a vein effect on both sides of the leaf. If you look closely on a rhododendron leaf, it has a raised vein on the back side. And then I developed that center block to be able to form that leaf and create a raised vein. And then I would flip it over and put a vein on the front side. It was a depression vein to give it somewhat an illusion of the leaf. So the stems are recycled rebar, twisted to create a branch look. And then the frame around where the stone is stacked is a fabricated tray painted the Fallingwater red. I looked up and PPG actually markets a paint called Fallingwater red. So I acquired some of that to use that because the window frames and so forth at the house is painted that color. So I'm very pleased with the piece. I thought it turned out very nice. I did some other representations on some things, but I kind of settled on this on the table. You can see on this photo slide on the left is a close-up of the rhododendron branch and the leaves. And then kind of looking at the scrolls on an item there they're upside down, obviously, but kind of looking at that in progress. So I'm really into doing the forging of all surfaces, being either just textured or extremely shaped. And, everything's done hot in a coke forge. And I do have power hammers I use quite a bit. Like the leaves are mostly done under the power hammer. The same with the scroll tapers. Yeah, the forging's a very interesting process. I've been blacksmithing for over 40 years now, and it never seems to amaze me on what I can do in the forging process. Been really enjoying teaching at Touchstone over the years. I've got some students now from past students have gone on, like Nick, and some other students have gone on to their own careers and developing their technique and processes. So it's been a real joy to see other students move on in the craft. I've always liked to share, ideas, processes, what have you. I don't really consider anything being a real secret in the craft. So I really have appreciated Touchstone for all the years of being able to teach there and pass along. So yeah, thanks again, Scott.
Great, thanks, Glenn. We have a few minutes left. If anybody would like to ask a question, just go ahead and type it into the Q&A window there at the bottom of your screen. Lindsay, I wanted to just wrap up and have you maybe talk a little bit about your 50th anniversary campaign and plans for the future, next 50 years.
Sure. Well, as you heard, Touchstone has really been pivotal in a lot of people's lives. And we're very proud to be celebrating our 50th anniversary. I certainly have to thank all the artists that are here on this panel, not only for being a part of this, but for really sharing your time and your talent with those who want to learn from you through your time teaching at Touchstone. I love that we have Nick, who, you know, really did come full circle here from starting out as an assistant intern, learning from Glenn, and now having a wildly successful studio practice in Baltimore, which is exciting to see public art being made that, you know, we can say we knew him back when he was first learning. So we are really embarking on the next 50 years with a bold vision plan of taking all of the most wonderful things about our campus and enhancing them through studio improvements, through expansion of our intern program, to upgrading some of our facilities, to really making trails that can access the nature that we are surrounded by. So creating walking trails through the 100 acres that we are not activating right now. It's a bold plan. And right now, what we are trying to do is to raise $1.5 million to get to a place where that vision can start to come into fruition. So we are over our halfway mark at this point to really build up our capacity to be able to take this next step into the future, and you know, build up the infrastructure needed to support where we see ourselves going. It's really exciting to see the outpouring of support we've had from foundations and individuals, and from all of the artists on here who work so hard and have actually donated their work from this exhibition to be part of this online auction so that we can raise funds to put back into our programming and our campus and our mission. I think what is so special about the craft community, and I think you've heard it here from some of these artists, is everybody's willingness to share and to really work hard to support this community. So we hope that those of you on this Zoom will at least go over and look through the images on the auction site. There are a few additional artworks from individuals in the region like Thaddeus Mosley, Tadao Arimoto, AI Jewelry, Eileen Lampman. And if anything catches your fancy, bid and know that it is going towards a really worthy cause. And again, thank you to all the artists on here for all your generosity. It was so fun to build this small community and immerse ourselves at Fallingwater and then see the progress over the last year, which is also illustrated in the exhibition, and then speak with you today. So thank you. And thank you, Scott.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. We do have some questions. Oh, jump in. Was that Nick?
Oh, yeah, I'm just looking through them.
Yeah,
Should
great.
I sponsor? Okay, got it. Okay.
Okay.
Malka, I'm sorry if I just pronounced your name wrong. It is how difficult to gauge glass blowing in. So the question is, how difficult was it to gauge blowing the glass into the metal cages to keep the glass from shattering? Well, I went to grad school and it took me about 2 years to figure it out. So fairly difficult, which is one of the reasons you don't see it very often. But really the major trick is figuring out what shapes of the metal will react poorly to the glass. So if it's something that's like very sharp, the metal that's touching the glass will heat up too quickly and fuse to the glass. And you have to preheat the metal so that if it's too cold, it'll shatter the glass, but if it's too hot, it'll fuse to it. So it's a bit of a mess of a process, but we figured it out pretty well by now. So I hope that answers your question. Also, feel free to email me or reach out to me on any social media, and I'd be happy to share more of the process with you.
Great, great. I've got one here for Yoko about the dark leaves on your piece, which are the rhododendron leaves. Was it an additional layer of glaze or paint added to it? So maybe talk about that process, paint added after firing.
Sure. So thank you for the great question. So the color that shows up on my base is a color pigment that's called underglaze. So that they are designed to survive the kiln firing temperature, at least the firing temperature that I use. So it depends on the firing temperature, certain colors from certain pigment survive better. And sometimes if the firing temperature is too high, like Kevin's wood firing temperature, that most of the color pigment cannot survive, that they just evaporate. So in my piece's case, that I apply the underglaze on the piece that's formed and trimmed before any firing, so that the half dry surface will absorb the moisture from the underglaze, so it adheres better. Then during the bisque firing, which is a past preparation firing, during that firing, the underglaze will fuse to the surface of the clay body. So it will be a permanent, almost like an imprint to the surface, so they can survive the glaze firing under a glaze to have the crisp, clean silhouette. If you are interested in the process, that my website, yokosekinovabe.com, has step-by-step photos of underglaze decorations. So
great.
Take a look. Thank
Great,
you.
thank you. We've got a couple here for Glenn. I'll just start with the first one. How do you treat your metal so it doesn't oxidize over time?
Yes, I didn't realize I typed in an answer, but I'm using a real classic old-time linseed oil and wax, beeswax, linseed oil and beeswax mixture. It's been used for years for a metal finish. I heat the metal to a couple hundred degrees thereabouts and apply it so it goes on warm, and it dries a lot better that way. It takes a while for it to dry, but it makes a nice finish. It doesn't cover up the forged texture, unlike paint or any other type of heavy coating.
Sure.
So I've been like to use that on anything that would be used indoors. And it's something that can be redone relatively easily and not affect the piece. So it's just a matter of re-wiping on an oil wax mixture and rejuvenating the piece if need be. So, and then I saw that the second question was if I've done any work on the house and the hardware or such. No, I haven't. So
No, but I was just gonna mention, the question was, has Glenn worked on any of the steel hardware or fittings at Fallingwater? And we did actually reach out to Touchstone maybe 3 years ago for help with an outdoor sculpture piece of ours that had seen some damage. And Lindsay brought, I think, 3 jewelry maker. I'm trying to remember their specific.
Yep, a small
technique,
metals
but-
artist, then a blacksmith.
Yeah, it was a piece by Joseph Goto that's on our 3rd floor terrace. And so they worked with our sculpture conservator in correcting some of the damage that was done to that piece. So it's nice to have neighbors that know what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was another question here about the Clearing Folk School that Lindsay answered, but this is a folk school in Door County, Wisconsin, very close to where Joe is actually right now. But it was founded by Jens Jensen, who was a landscape architect that actually Frank Lloyd Wright worked with quite a lot, and had done the landscape for Wright's house, Taliesin and Spring Green. So it's nice how things are all kind of coming together. I think that answers all of the questions in the Q&A, which is great. I want to thank you all again. And I do have, I think in the Q&A there, Lindsay had put in, and I copied the link to the auction. So the auction will be on until the close of the exhibition on December 31st. So we've got some time here, get some good holiday gifts at the end of the year. And of course, if you are at Fallingwater, the exhibition will be on display as well through December 31st. And it's in our Speyer gallery here as part of our visitor center. So I want to thank everyone again for joining us, the artists as well as our visitors. And we will have this webinar recorded and uploaded onto our website in a matter of a day or so. So you're welcome to go back and listen to each artist speak about their work again. And that'll be through the virtual experiences tab on the fallingwater.org website.